All right, guys, let's welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here with our 2025 preview and prediction for the North Carolina Tar Heels. Obviously, sweeping headlines across Chapel Hill this offseason as Mack Brown was fired. Something I predicted early on last year because the thing about North Carolina is they've been the exact same team every single year under Mack. Never great, never bad, but they were just stuck in the middle with him. And, you figured it was time for them to go find a younger coach that was coming through the ranks, and they did the complete opposite, Nick. They went out and got six-time Super Bowl champion Bill Belichick to be the front man for this program. Freddie Kitchens, of course, he's had a lot of experience at the NFL ranks. Third year on staff, he'll be the offensive coordinator, and Stephen Belichick will be the defensive play caller. Spent last year at Washington fielding a pretty good defense, and they were able to haul in the top 10 portal class in their first year. What do you make of the offseason for UNC, Nick? Because it's very unorthodox to go with back-to-back head coaches who are absolute legends of the sport in a day and age where youth is reigning supreme in college football.
A very odd time on Chapel Hill. I mean, it's must-watch TV. I can't lie. The fact that they ended up bringing in Bill Belichick, kind of a crazy hire, really didn't seem real when it was first happening. Kind of just an insane way to kind of have things develop here. Obviously, he had a huge falling out in the NFL after what was an incredible tenure with the New England Patriots. Also, bounced around with Cleveland. He's, a couple different places here and there. A legend of the game. He had been sitting on the couch doing the Manning cast stuff, and all of a sudden he ends up popping back up in college football at North Carolina. A weird turn of events here. I thought Mack Brown was doing a decent job at North Carolina, but you're right. The ceiling had kind of been capped. They had been to 5 straight bowl games, but they had lost 4 of those in a row, and they lost 5 of those in a row, and they were really struggling in those bowl games. They had gone to 6 straight under Mack Brown. They just really were not looking like a team that was going to reach high heights. They kind of capped out at 8-9 wins and were just unable to really do much more than that. And they had a plethora of talent, including Drake May, who ended up ironically going to the Patriots, which is kind of funny how that all ended up working out. Bill Belichick steps in here. Obviously, he has a lot of high football IQ to bring to this, and I wondered what it would look like recruiting, but he's doing a decent job so far. He seems active, and kids still know his name. He's a well-known name in the sport. It's very odd to kind of move on from someone who's in their 70s and hire somebody who's in their 70s. But we'll see how this goes. Maybe it's a bridge option. Maybe it's only a couple of years. But, of course, I'm very intrigued. I think North Carolina is absolutely must-watch TV this year.
Now let's go ahead and dive into this roster, starting with the offense. This is a group that was pretty respectable last year, despite having pretty subpar quarterback play. Amari Hampton carried the load. He's obviously now in the NFL, and that's a lot of production they have to replace. They still do return 4 starters, though. But they also added, upwards of 16 guys in the portal. We're going to start with Gio Lopez, that quarterback from South Alabama. Quality season as his first year of a starter for them. He's a dual-threat guy. Showcased great deep ball, nice poise. The decision-making, I thought, was pretty on point with 5 interceptions. And he shows nice efficiency versus the blitz at 6'2", 220. Bryce Baker, 155th overall ranked recruit, 12th ranked quarterback prospect. He doubled down on his commitment to UNC, staying firm pack with them. Max Johnson at some point should be a full go. I think he said he's had like 5 or 6 surgeries after that bad leg injury in week 1 last season, so I don't think he's going to be in the future plans at all. But it is a veteran who can be in the ear of these younger guys, and I know that he's going to certainly bring some energy to uplift spirits around him. So it's nice that Max Johnson was able to keep his leg, Nick, because that was certainly in doubt, he said. And I think Gio Lopez is going to be the quarterback of the future here.
Yeah, I actually really like this quarterback room. I'll quickly talk about Max Johnson because I think he's a good name to have here. I got to imagine he's just trying to kind of get his stripes, end up going to coaching. I think he'll end up being a graduate assistant probably after this season, kind of just continue to be into that pathway. I think he'd be a great coach at North Carolina if he can end up doing that. I think that's kind of what they're trying to set up there with a quarterback that had a pretty lengthy career at some previous stops. When you look at this QB room as it is right now, Gio Lopez is an intriguing prospect to kind of start things off. Transfers from South Alabama, where he was really good for them last year. 66% comp rate, 2,600 yards passing, 18 touchdowns to 5 picks, had 463 yards on the ground and 7 scores as well. So he's a versatile athlete, at 6 foot, 220 pounds, pretty interesting build and body type in my opinion. But this is a kid that I think's got a whole lot of potential to grow as a dual threat option in the ACC. I think he's a really solid quarterback, and I would trust him under center for my team in year 1. I think Bryce Baker is clearly the future there. He's a kid that's committed to North Carolina. He wants to be part of the project they're building. 6'3", 205, Pretty solid pocket passer, nice footwork, high football IQ as well coming in with him. I think the future's bright at quarterback here. You look at Lopez, he's only a redshirt sophomore, so he's got some experience left, or some years left in him, that is. You have some older depth experience in Mac Johnson, who can really kind of help out coaching around those guys. Then you have Bryce Baker, who's a really talented young player who will develop and learn under this system. If I'm a UNC fan, I'm really happy with the state of this quarterback room.
Now you look at the running back group. Davion Goss, he's a former three-star, that is, in last year's class. Had a few solid games as the team's second leading rusher. He's going to step into a much heavier role this fall. Benjamin Hall was quiet in 2 years at Michigan. Saw a large role in the bowl game, but didn't really do anything. 235-pounder is certainly going to be considered a power back. Damon June, an incoming three-star, should get time as a true freshman if healthy. A veteran in Caleb Hood at 225 pounds should get a long leash. I think his experience could certainly be coveted by this staff. It's certainly a weaker room, lots of youth, so I think they're going to be able to, sort out their future this season, much like at quarterback. I think Caleb Hood could certainly be an underrated player, Nick. It's going to get a lot of touches.
Yeah, I like what they have here developing-wise. I think Goss is a good player, 326, 5 yards per carry, 4 scores last year. He should get a couple grabs here and there. I think he'll be really solid out of the backfield, a couple touches. Caleb Hood's a younger player that they're going to hope to rely on here. He's a bit of a veteran player that's been around the program for a little bit. Goss is the younger player. I think Hood's a decent guy as well. He didn't get a ton of touches last year, but he'll find a way to be involved. Benjamin Hall's an interesting add out of the portal. Wasn't super productive at Michigan, but he had some decent games here and there. He got 16 touches in the bowl game against Alabama, although he did absolutely nothing with those 16 touches. A guy that they maybe want to try and get something out of. I think Goss is a decent running back to start things off. I'm not super impressed with this group overall. Losing Omarion Hampton is certainly a tough thing to replace, but Gio Lopez's legs will help you out in that regard as well. So I think this will be a balanced rushing attack that shouldn't be too bad.
Now you look at the wide receiver group for UNC. Kobe Paysour, returning starter, enters his 4th year. Has always had respectable production, but needs to take that next step with as much playing time as he gets. Jordan Shipp only had 100-plus yards last year in his debut season. Chris Culliver had a big TD versus NC State, but that was pretty much it all year. Added the slot receiver from Michigan State, Isaiah Johnson, who had nearly 300 yards and 2 scores. Nathan Leacock comes over from UT, 6'3", 217 pounds. Didn't see the field in 2 years there, though. Dayton Sneed, same goes for him. He also comes over from Tennessee as well, with not much to speak of in terms of reps. Picked up a couple of tight ends, Connor Cox, Jordan Owens, Shamar Easter, but they're hoping Jake Johnson can be stout this season. I think this is a very weak pass-catching group. They just hit the portal to add bodies pretty much. No difference makers. I'm not even sure if they have subpar contributors here. But if they want to follow the theme that Bill had at New England, he took a lot of guys that nobody thought could play ball, and they ended up having great careers. So maybe we're going to miss the boat on this one, Nick, but in terms of the college level and what they've added, I'm not impressed one bit.
Yeah, this is a weak room. I mean, there's no way to beat around the bush here. Kobe Paysour is a solid player, 365, 17.4 yards per grab for him last year, but no red zone production. Jordan Shipp, 115 yards and a touchdown for him, so there's maybe one touchdown there. Outside of that, I don't really love what they have here. I think Aziz Johnson was not a bad add for Michigan State. He had 276, 17.3 yards per grab, and 2 scores last year. So he's a guy they want to rely on the slot, a younger player. He was pretty solid. They added a couple different guys here and there. Snead, who didn't do a whole lot at Tennessee. Same thing with Nathan Leacock, who they added in, who they think is a decent player out of Tennessee. But overall, a very weak unit here. Tight end, they have a couple different pieces, Jake Johnson, Jordan Owens. But in general here, I think there's just a weaker room and not a great start. They're going to try and run the ball a lot this year. I have a feeling they're going to try and get those numbers similar where they were last year at 182 yards per game. But with no Omarion Hampton, it might be tough to kind of replicate that type of production on the ground.
Certainly think you'll see a short passing game, trying to get the ball out quickly, maybe take some shots downfield, but it's going to be on the shoulders of the quarterback more than the receivers. So look at the offensive line. They hit the portal and snagged a phenomenal player, Will Osteen, one of the top left tackles in the country, after 3 years of starting at Jack State. So that's a phenomenal addition there. Aiden Banfield, 6'3", 300 was average in his true freshman season, but he does come back, with some nice potential there. Center is going to return Austin Blasky, who was great in pass pro. He started his career at UGA and was there for 3 years, so certainly a talented ball player. Right guard's going to see a few transfers battle for a starting nod. Daniel King, 6'5", 340, was a great 3-year starter for Troy. Really stout in pass pro. Ja'Kai Moore really wasn't that good at South Carolina, but he spent 5 years in the program and at times did show some pop in the run game. Trevon Green returns at right tackle, but he was awful in pass pro for the Tar Heels, allowing a whopping 10 sacks and 40 pressures, with the 10 being the most allowed by any lineman in college football last year. Wasn't that bad in the run game, though, but still they brought in William Boone, who's a stout pass pro guy at Prairie View A&M to compete with him. He's 6'6", 340. I honestly think this offensive line's quite impressive. The size is pretty astronomical. Plenty of proven contributors. Also got a guy, Christo Kelly from Holy Cross, who was a good multi-year starter at center. So I think they have some depth, a handful of different options. And the guys they do have coming back from last year, Nick, I think you're certainly going to see them improve. So I think they're going to thrive under this staff this season. Most of these guys are entering their final season of eligibility, so the future for this group is very unclear. But in the immediate future, in 25, I'm pretty excited for them.
Yeah, this is a solid unit to start with. Will Osteen, I think, is a good player. They brought in at left tackle. Banfield and Blasky are two returning solid guys on the left guard and center, respectively, that are really good. I think Kelly, that add from Holy Cross, is a phenomenal add. Daniel King was a decent add as well. Trevon Green, I expect him to improve and be better this year. He's a pretty solid asset. I know he had some weaknesses last year in the pass game, but I think his run protection is solid if you just polish the pass block. He'll be a really good asset. Overall, I do think this is a good offensive line. I like what they have here. I think it's a strength on this unit. They should be good at run block and pass block.
I move to the offensive verdict for UNC. Outside of the offensive line, there isn't really much to like about this offense. The running back room is young but hopeful. The wide receiver group's very lackluster. And despite Gio Lopez having, a lot to feel good about, still entering his first year in a tougher conference. So I think this is a below average group as a whole. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I'm going to give them a B- to start with. And I think they can work their way up from there. But they're certainly lacking talent, proven contributors in the supporting cast.
Yeah, they're lacking a lot of talent here overall. A lot of younger guys are taking gambles on a lot of transfers from other programs that, bigger programs where guys didn't really work out here. I like what they have at quarterback. The quarterback room is really solid. I think Gio Lopez is a great quarterback to kind of lead the way and bridge into this era with Bryce Baker further down the depth chart as a younger guy. The running back room has some decent assets, but overall still a pretty weak unit. The wide receiving core very weak. I'm concerned about the future there for sure. But I think there is some talent on the O-line that can certainly help out and kind of balance things out. Overall, this offense, I think a B- is a fair grade. We'll see how they develop throughout the season, though.
Now move to the defensive side of the ball. And this was the biggest knock on Mac Brown's. The defense every single year was just not that good. And I thought they were really talented, especially on the D-line for most of those years. And you would just see them waste talent after talent. A guy like Tony Grimes, who was a 5-star, was no good. They had a 5-star was a Travis Shaw up front. He's now going to Texas, and I'm sure they're going to get that potential out of him. It was just disappointing. That's why I seen the writing on the wall that Mac was going to be gone. 28 points per game allowed last year. They're only going to get 2 starters back, both of which are in the secondary. We're going to start with the defensive line, though. It's a transfer-heavy unit. Smith Vilbert, probably the most notable guy here, a quality rotational D-end last year for Penn State. Price Yates was a pretty good run defender for UConn across 3 years. Joseph Mapoi didn't see the field at Penn State. Makar Abo-Jadoi was good at Delaware versus the run with 9 sacks as well last season. That's it for the defensive ends. The interior defensive line, C.J. Mims, he was a quality run defender. He was a 300-pounder at ECU. DeAndre Robinson, 303 pounds, saw 150-plus snaps last season for Florida. Isaiah Johnson, he saw the same amount of time at Arizona last year, a little bit bigger at 311. Neither of those guys really did anything of note. I think this is a solid defensive end group. The interior has size, but no proven production. I certainly like the effort here, Nick. I don't know if it's going to be much to really change the fold for this defense, but I'm applauding the effort that Belichick's giving it.
Yeah, they've added a lot of different faces here. I don't love when a whole unit is completely revamped in the transfer portal, so I'm not going to say I absolutely love this unit, but I think there are some high upside potential with some of the guys they added. Smith Vilbert from Penn State's a decent add. He had 4 tackles for loss last year, 12 total tackles, 1.5 sacks, and QB hurry. He's a player that they're hoping could, certainly break out and be strong here. CJ Mims was pretty solid at East Carolina, 23 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks last year. They're hoping to get some production out of him. Deontay Robinson coming in from Florida, 17 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Interesting prospect there at 6'4", 300 pounds. He could be solid. Price Yates was pretty good at UConn over 2 years, 21 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 5 QB hurries in 2024. He had 14 TFLs, 4.5 sacks, and 2 QB hurries in 2023. A guy they want to get some production out of. Isaiah Johnson, he was okay at Arizona, 9 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks at 6'2", 275. He's an interesting player. Joseph Mapoi, who's from the Democratic Republic of Congo, which I think is pretty interesting overall. He was at Penn State last year and didn't do anything. A curious name, though, bringing a guy in from the DR of Congo. A lot of different names here, a lot of different bodies across the board. I like the size. They're a pretty strong unit overall in terms of that strength regard, but can they find a pass rush? I'm going to keep an eye on that.
Now I move to the middle of this defense. This was always a highly productive group under Mac. Was the linebackers. Kamari House was an average player in 300-plus snaps for Washington last year. I love the addition of Andrew Simpson, a phenomenal player from Boise State. He was a top-tier 2-year starter. Good versus the run, sounding coverage, had 15 sacks in his career, so this is a very good player. Micaiah Gabor was a really good run defender last year for Nebraska. I think he has good pass rush upside as well. I think he's a good add in my book. Tyler Thompson, 150 reps last year, really didn't do much, though. I think all around this is a pretty solid linebacking group. House obviously doesn't have to learn much as he was already in this system last year. And Simpson's going to be a phenomenal playmaker, Nick. And Gabor, I thought he was very good for Nebraska in his career. I thought he's an underrated player. So they have guys here that I'm confident in.
Yeah, I like what they added here. I think Tyler Thompson's your returner. Do you want to talk about 5 total tackles for him? Not a whole lot, but he's a younger player. Curious to see how he develops. House coming in from Washington, 35 total tackles, a tackle for loss, and a QB hurry. 4 pass breakups and a pick last year as well. So he's a very versatile guy. I think he's really solid. Obviously worked with the defensive coordinator last year at Washington. I look at Andrew Simpson. He's a guy that's all over the field. 46 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and a pick last year. He's really good in that regard. I think he's a disruptor. He's really solid. Got a pretty good high football IQ. He had 66 total tackles, 16 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks in 2023, plus 6 QB hurries that year. So he's a guy you can really rely on. Malik Gabor coming in from Nebraska, 49 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 3 QB hurries. He was really good for them last year. I think he's a solid player to return 3 pass breakups for him as well. Overall, this is an interesting unit here. I like the transfers they've added. I think it's a unit that can certainly develop with some younger guys.
I moved to the secondary. Marcus Allen's one of those aforementioned starters. He was a quality player last year, but overall he's probably average at best. Jalen Thompson only played a few snaps last year. Thaddeus Dixon should be a starter after being tremendous for Washington this past season. Ty Adams played 100-plus snaps in 5 games last year, so they made it a focal point to get him on the field. Khalil Conley, redshirt freshman, didn't play last season. Caleb Cost, he was a starter in the slot last fall. He's a pretty good player, had 6 plays on the ball and 60-plus tackles. Look at the safety group, has 2 transferred, I think, transfers penciled in as starters. Gavin Gibson was great for ECU this past year, really impressed in coverage. Bryson Coleman was pretty quiet across 600-plus snaps in 3 years at Minnesota. Then you have a redshirt freshman in Greg Smith coming over from Florida with Will Hardy, who's a really good player. I thought in his 300 snaps last season, and as a senior, I think he should get plenty of playing time this year, and he'll probably end up being that starter there in the back end. So I don't think this is like a horrid secondary by any means. A few veterans coming back is nice. Some of the transfers are solid. I think depth and overall playmaking are certainly going to be iffy, though. I point to guys like Allen, Dixon, and then Hardy to be standouts. Nick, after that, I'm not really sure who will step up. Cost coming back after his experience last year is helpful. And then Gavin Gibson, again, he was great for ECU. So I think they have a nice blend here that could certainly lead to results.
Yeah, this is a decent secondary here. Caleb Cost is a great player to return. 6'3" total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 picks. One of those was a pick 6, 4 pass breakups. Marcus Allen, he also had 4 pass breakups and 2 picks. 36 total tackles for him. Will Hardy, 44 total tackles, a pick and a pass breakup. He's a solid player. Trey Miller had 9 tackles. Ty Adams had 4 tackles. Those guys, they're hoping to get some more reps this year. They didn't contribute a whole lot last year. Gavin Gibson, he was a good add from East Carolina. 52 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups, 3 picks, including a pick 6. He's a good player. I think Coleman Bryson from Minnesota is an intriguing add. 20 total tackles, 3 pass breakups from him. He's a guy that they're hoping to get more out of. Thaddeus Dixon was a really solid player at Washington. 43 total tackles, 10 pass breakups, and a pick for him. He's a really good coverage asset. Had 6 pass breakups the year before that as well. Greg Smith comes in from Florida. Didn't do a whole lot there. Had a pass breakup, though, last year. I think the secondary profiles will be a solid unit come the end of the season. They were pretty solid against the pass at times last year. Middle of the road, 70th in the nation. I think they'll be solid against the pass again this year. I like what they have here. I like what they return and like what they added.
Look at the defensive verdict. The Tar Heels D was always poor under Mac, and now the Belichicks, who are considered defensive aces, bringing NFL scheme, style, and terminology to Chapel Hill. This is a quality group of transfers, but building chemistry and getting all of this implemented year one is going to be a tall task. I like the linebackers. I think the defensive line and secondary isn't one I exactly view heavily negative by any means. Certainly not positive, but certainly I've seen worse, and we've previewed a lot worse. So I think over time, this defense will progress. Maybe not so much in 2025, though, Nick, because this is a lot to implement for, these 18, 19-year-old kids compared to NFL pros.
Hey, I like what they have here overall. I think the coaching will be really solid, a high upside coaching staff with the 2 Belichicks. I like some of the players they added at linebacker and in the secondary. I think the pass rush defensive line is still extremely weak, and I'm concerned about that. Certainly, I wonder what the run defense will look like this year. I think it'll be a tough adjustment year one, certainly, but I do like the system they're going to be building here. And overall, I think this is a defense that profiles to be a solid defense in the future and should improve this year. They should cut down that 28.1 points per game, certainly.
Now I move to the schedule and the prediction for North Carolina. I think the biggest question mark is, will this work and can it work? I certainly think it can, as UNC has always been an above 500 team. Now with Mac Brown showing zero progression really ever. It was the exact same team year after year. Now we have another veteran who's going to bring some old school tactics to the trenches and to the defense. I think Bill is clearly committed. I don't think he's 1 foot in, 1 foot out trying to get back at the NFL because they left him hanging for a year after he got fired from New England. So more so than he was toward the end of his tenure with the Patriots, though, Nick, where he didn't seem as committed. So I think Bill certainly is here, and the vision I have is that this guy's going to show up. He's going to do everything he can to improve this program. And, after, he wants to win games as well, right? So I think they're going to show growth. And I don't think he's going to be here for more than 3 years. And so that would make you wonder, what's the vision here? And I think that's for him to hand the keys to Steven Belichick for the future. So the time is now, and it's very important. And I think Bill's going to be urgent in making sure this team can, handle business and succeed, Nick. So I think that this is going to be a very fun project, that it will work. And that's the vision for the future. And I think that's how North Carolina is going to kind of solve its problem at head coach, is by Steven Belichick being the future leader of this program. We both have them at 6-6. I think it's a very respectable start, especially with the schedule that does have TCU coming to town on a Monday night, week 1. I think that everything I said is going to come to fruition at some point. Nick, what are your thoughts on that analysis?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair analysis. I was going to say, I think Steven Belichick is ultimately the heir apparent on Chapel Hill. Like I said at the beginning of the episode here, this is must-watch TV, right? There's no way to get around it. Everything about a legend coming to college and coaching in the college game for the first time. Bill Belichick seems motivated. It seems like he's ready to be involved and kind of make things happen down here on Chapel Hill. I think it's must-watch television. You have to kind of see how this develops and goes here. Also, obviously, he has his girlfriend, which has kind of been an interesting media topic throughout the offseason with her sort of antics, and curious to see how that plays into it. Obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention her. A very intriguing story nonetheless. Curious to see how that develops. I think this will be a fun experiment. I think I'm certainly going to watch North Carolina whenever I can. I think the games they play on the Friday nights are going to be very interesting. I'm looking at that game at Syracuse on October 31st. I will be there in attendance. I'm excited to go check out that game. In upstate New York, they play a couple other weeknight games here and there that will be very intriguing for this schedule. This is a team that's going to get a lot of national attention from ESPN. You need a lot of primetime games. They have the game September 1st against TCU on a Monday night, a very intriguing matchup. I've picked the last 3 straight Monday night games correct in a row, getting the winners here. I think TCU will win that game as well. So I'm going to put my pride on the line on that one as well. But we'll see how this UNC team looks in week 1 of the Bill Belichick era. The schedule is tough, so I think 6-6 is a fair grade. But I would not be shocked to get to 7-8 wins potentially if all goes their way. The defense will improve. The offense should be interesting to watch as well. I think Gio Lopez is a phenomenal prospect. But regardless of what happens on the field, I think this is a program you have to watch this year. It's a story that's super intriguing. They've been the story of the offseason. They'll be the story of the season, kind of sucking some of the air out of that Colorado Hollywood drama. I think it's shifted a little bit east towards Chapel Hill. Very excited to see what happens here at North Carolina. Must-watch television. I'm going to keep saying it. Very excited to watch this team this year.
Yeah, again, this is a 5-year contract Belichick signed. He's 73 years old. I think 3 years, that's what he has to make this work and to try and get the ship headed in the right direction. They hand the keys to his son, Nick. So that's what I'm giving it. 3 years. I think this will be a good start in 6-6. And I think over time, you'll certainly see this team start to compete. And I think the program is actually headed in the right direction. And them hiring what people maybe consider a washed-up ball coach, Nick, could really lead to big dividends long-term for their program.
I think Steven Belichick's a great play caller on defense. I think he can certainly turn into a great head coach with the proper setup and learning from his father. Overall, excited to see how this project goes, and I agree. I think they're in the right direction.
That's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.